So today is Thanksgiving Day, or is the holiday of Thanksgiving in the United States, 2017, and I will be giving you the actual background of Thanksgiving as well as Columbus Day. Um, and possibly even um, the Independence Day, what's known as the 4th of July. Kind of has to do with this. It more has to do with this. Now, the next we'll have a picture of the United States up here, and who better to represent it than her? Because let's face it, you'd rather look at her than, well, me for one. Actually, why is that blurry? You'd rather look at her than Donald Trump, right? Or pretty much any other first lady or president. And it's got the American flag on it. Now, let's go through it. And don't think that I'm at all colored by the fact that I have a Latin American flag flying right there. Now, first settlement in the United States, what was it? That's right, Jamestown. And you also had Roanoke, and you also had a bunch of different settlements that were in what's it called? In Virginia, in the James River, Chesapeake Bay area. These were commercial commerce, and they mainly brought over trade goods because they figured they'd trade with the Indians because the Spanish, wherever they went in the Americas, they struck gold. Well, all they found was, trees and tar and sand and water. And the Native Americans, they were the Algonquin peoples of Powhatan, and they were extremely hostile and actually in the middle of a tribal war. That's why people didn't get wiped out right away. They needed them as a source for copper and other metals they could make themselves to fight their enemies. John Smith's story is mostly a lie. You have to depend on Percy's story. So they went through a lot of hardships. And they had a starving time, they were at disease, they might have even been poisoned, and there were probably some runaway Catholics with them because of what happened with Guy Fawkes and the Gunpowder Plot. Protestants came over, not because of religious persecution. They left England because of religious persecution to go to Holland. What they did is they tried to escape the world and just live as their own people in where they were at. So they got to Plymouth, and it took them a lot longer, and they ran into a guy known as Squanto. One thing about Squanto was he spoke English, and he was a Christian. And these natives were a hell of a lot more friendly than the ones around the Chesapeake Bay. So they held a ritual of Thanksgiving, which, because the English Civil War already happened, was already a holiday. It was a reviving from the Bible of, I think, the Feast of the Tabernacles or the Feast of Sukkoth, where they gave thanks to God because they shouldn't have survived, basically. Okay, and the first Thanksgiving lasted for 3 days straight, and they had shooting contests with the Indians. The Indians already knew what firearms were, and things kind of went good. But it wasn't the first settlement, and that was a holly jolly time. And eventually, their settlement just got absorbed by the Boston settlement, right? Again, the smallpox blanket story tries to get put in every area of history, and they're finally trying to push it to the Old West. Sorry, but it wasn't until after the Old West and the entire settling of, pacification of the Indians of North America that we actually found out what the hell germs were. I mean, think of when Joseph Lister existed, and that'll just give you the idea. So microbiological warfare, nobody knew anything about. But also the first permanent settlement in North America was Spanish St. Augustine, Florida. But this is about English. Civil War happened. Jamestown got written out of, and so did Roanoke, written out of American history books for about 100 years, a little over. Finally started showing up in the late 80s, early 90s again. And Thanksgiving still was a Protestant holiday because they didn't want to celebrate Thanksgiving. And it wasn't until after the Civil War that people from New England, because New England then became Catholicized with the influx of the Irish, and then later on the Italians, but at this point mainly the Irish, because they were the fodder and the chattel and the not even indentured servants, but just the people that'd come over here, they'd grab, throw them in the army, and they were the fodder for the reason why the North could just overrun the South. Yeah, so that's first Thanksgiving. As an offense against the Native Americans, no, just no. It didn't represent any type of conquering of land or anything like that, or taking of land. In fact, you could even say that the settlers of Plymouth pretty much blended in with the Native Americans and didn't really have problems with them. You really have to search. I mean, there's a time when they dug up some mounds they didn't know were burial mounds, and to try to find, tubers and stuff, and then it's just like, oh shoot, I think the term was, we desecrated their sepulchers, is how they talked back then. So, oh yeah, Columbus Day. You know what? That'll be a separate episode. But yeah, if you want to really get pissed off about Thanksgiving, it's because it was an anti-Catholic holiday, because of Spanish. And it's also where the lie of the Inquisition and even things like the Pit and the Pendulum were still being written, well into the the late 1800s, and we still get this idea of the Spanish Inquisition, even from Monty Python and even later down, but it was anti-Hispanic propaganda. And Thanksgiving, the first Thanksgiving in the United States, was celebrated, with Squanto and the Pilgrims, but it was not the first Thanksgiving, and it did not celebrate the first English settlement in the Americas. The third or fourth, maybe, but it was also just propaganda to use against the South and the Catholics, who by this time were flooding in, as Italians, those dark, swarthy people that looked like Mexicans, that were Latino, that looked Hispanic. All right, peace.